All right, well, I'm Noah Malgeri. I'm the director of the Pro Bono Project at Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada here in Las Vegas. And I am here with one of our volunteer attorneys, Dirk Gaspar, who's of counsel at the law firm of Holland Hart here in Las Vegas office. And he is one of our volunteers on a new initiative that we're offering now in response to the COVID pandemic, which is our small business legal advice project. We're really excited about it in partnership with Clark County and a bunch of our dedicated volunteer attorneys and firms who have stepped up and brought their expertise and their skill sets to bear on helping small businesses who have been adversely impacted by the COVID pandemic deal with some of those issues. Dirk, thanks so much for joining me here at Legal Aid Center today. Now, what did you see as an attorney advising these businesses? What were you hearing from your clients, or what type of impacts were they experiencing?
Now, the small business clients, by far, I think the biggest impact they had was their ability to generate revenue and then conversely pay rent. Most of these small businesses, of course, are renting spaces at various retail or commercial properties. Mm-hmm. When the shutdown happened, certain businesses that were deemed non-essential, like I have a friend who owns a whole series of hair and nail salons, and her business was specifically deemed to be non-essential. Well, unfortunately for her, when the shutdown happened, she was in the midst of doing tenant improvements at one of the local malls, and the shutdown prevented her from finishing the tenant improvements and also prevented her from opening. Meanwhile, of course, landlords are still looking for her to pay rent, mm-hmm. Which is kind of the common theme I've seen through a lot of small businesses throughout Nevada. Mm-hmm. Their businesses were adversely impacted by COVID and the shutdowns, but the landlords are still looking for their monthly rent.
Right. Now, do the leases that these small businesses typically have with their landlords provide any sort of provision typically or customarily that would accommodate this sort of a circumstance, an unforeseen event like this, that would provide them some of protection?
Sure. What you're talking about is called a force majeure provision. And a force majeure provision, in a general sense, basically says that there's an unforeseen circumstances. And examples could be like wars or terrorist incidents, or in this case, a pandemic. If something like happens, then a certain party is provided a certain amount of relief. Generally, it's non-performance of the contract. Now, in these types of small business commercial leases, most of them do have a force majeure provision, but it's not for the protection of the tenant. It's actually for the protection of the landlord. And typically what those provisions say is that in the event of a force majeure event, the tenant has to keep paying rent.
Have the landlords been, in your experience, giving them some sort of accommodations or extensions, or how have they been treated?
Yeah, well, I mean, at first you had the directives by Governor Sisolak, which of course put a moratorium on evictions and a moratorium on charging late fees and those kinds of things. And then, so during that period, those types of granted credit was forced upon the landlords. Well, that's now been lifted by the governor.
When did that expire?
That expired at the end of June.
Okay.
And so commercial evictions, late fees, all those kinds of things can proceed now. But the governor's office has, wisely so, has strongly encouraged landlords and commercial landlords and tenants to work it out, to come to some sort of arrangement. And in my experience, for the most part, and I won't say it's without exception, but most of the landlords I've seen have been willing to do that. For example, in the case of my friend I was just talking about, we approached the landlord, and at first, when she was dealing with them directly, they were very standoffish. Hey, this is what the lease says, you have to pay us. Mm-hmm. And then when we approached them, said, hey, look, you either work with us or you're not going to get anything.
Right.
And she's going to break the lease, and you can sue her, but what's that going to really get you? And in that situation, the landlord said, okay, I understand, let's work it out. And they worked it out. Mm-hmm. And so, and I see that happening more often than not in Las Vegas. We have landlords realizing the gravity of the situation and saying, okay, let's figure something out so we don't have to end up in court and everybody just spends a bunch of money. And that's, of course, is always the best case scenario.
Is this something that you think a lot of other small businesses could benefit from the assistance of an attorney in trying to negotiate that sort of an arrangement?
Absolutely, I think so. When you have an attorney involved, you have somebody who has done this a bunch of times, kind of speaks the language, and in the end, for the landlord, it's really more of a business decision than anything else. Again, it's not without exceptions, and sometimes personalities get involved, and it doesn't necessarily help, but the vast majority of the time, I think it does help. It also signals to the landlord early on that you don't have a tenant here who's trying to take advantage of the situation, that they want to abide by the terms of the lease. They want to have a business relationship going forward, and they're willing to do whatever they reasonably can to salvage the situation.
But I guess it makes sense when you think about it, because pragmatically, what is the landlord going to do? I mean,
Right.
if there's no tenants who can generate revenue,
Yeah.
then something's better than nothing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like I said, the landlords always have the right to sue the tenants for whatever. But small business, a lot of times they don't have the resources to pay, even if they get a judgment against them. And like I said, it's always better from a business standpoint, for a landlord, work out something now, get some money now, keep your tenant in business, rather than push them out.
Yeah, because if you push them out, how are you going to get a new tenant who can generate revenue?
Right.
Especially under current circumstances, and we don't even know when this is going to end.
Yeah, and for the tenant that you're pushing out, what's the judgment going to be worth against them if they can't pay rent? You're probably not going to collect on a judgment.
Right, that makes sense. Well, I can see why it would really be a great benefit to have somebody like you in your corner who can explain all that and negotiate on your behalf to communicate all that to your landlord.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you tell us about what you've observed in your practice from small businesses that they're experiencing as a result of this COVID thing?
I have a client who owns a small boutique hotel here, and she ran into a situation where, again, she was impacted by the loss of visitors coming to Las Vegas,
Right.
but she still had a commercial mortgage. The loan didn't have a force majeure provision, and so she calls up. Because she's reading in the newspaper about, like in Spain, she's like, oh, they declared an emergency, which creates a force majeure event over there. She says, do we have that here? But unfortunately, if you don't have a force majeure provision in your contract, U.S. law does not imply one. So she was stuck in a situation, I've seen this with other businesses, where technically she could stay open because she was a hotel, she was an essential business, but she could not generate any revenue, and then we had to negotiate with the mortgage lender to, negotiate an extension or a forbearance because she could not make the monthly mortgage.
Mm-hmm. So were the factors and considerations kind of similar in terms of, just pragmatically speaking, the lender's thinking, this is the best I can do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably even more so with a lender, because lenders are even more hesitant to want to take over a property than a landlord who could just flip it over to another tenant. With a mortgage holder, they got to foreclose, and they got to try to find another buyer. A much more difficult prospect.
Gotcha. And once again, I mean, this is a situation where having an attorney to negotiate on your behalf who understands all this is going to be invaluable and maybe
Sure.
save your business. So, it's a really great opportunity to be able to take advantage of this program for businesses that are eligible. And I really thank you and others like you, our other partners and other volunteers who have come alongside and stepped up to the plate to really help our community. The lifeblood of our economy here in Las Vegas is small businesses.
Right.
And people who have really generously volunteered their time, like yourself. It's a real credit to the profession. So thank you very, very much for that.
Well, it's been a great honor to help out, and I'm very excited to help out in the future in any way I can.
Great. So if you have a small business and you think you might like to apply for an attorney to help you out in dealing with something, legal issue that was precipitated by the COVID pandemic, such as landlord-tenant or employment issue, bankruptcy type situation, any type of a situation that is a COVID-related event that's resulted in a loss of revenue of 25% or more since mid-March, and you have 25 or fewer employees and you're unable to afford an attorney, please come to our website, www.lacsnprobono.org. Follow the link to the Small Business Legal Advice Project. You can apply online And if you're accepted into the program, we'll connect you with an attorney like Dirk, maybe Dirk if you're lucky, and you can get some help for free. And if you're an attorney who'd like to get involved with this exciting project and helping our community, reach out to me, Noam Algeri, Director of the Pro Bono Project, or give me a call at 702-386-1429, and I'll get you involved. Be happy to talk to you about how you can contribute whatever your special area of expertise is. If you're a business attorney, employment attorney, whatever the case may be, we have some sort of expertise or practice area that's valuable to small businesses. Please reach out to me. Let me know. I would love to work with you.